Rock and roll, music.
People.
Yeah, people in rock and roll.
That's the factory.
The Factory. We're going to make your Saturday morning. Live, 9 to 12 on ABC.
It's wild.
Australian rainforest, a glorious canopy of ancient trees sheltering countless varieties of plants and wildlife. Earth First is a beautifully illustrated book about the rainforest, its abundant flora and fauna, its natural history of millions of years, its unnatural depletion in the last 200. What is so precious about the remaining pockets of unspoiled rainforest? Why are some people prepared to put the life of the forest before their own? Earth First is available from ABC shops and bookstores everywhere.
Now, let's join your Earthwatch hosts David Smith and Maxine Gray. Whoa! Hi! Terrific. What a welcome. What a colourful audience too, isn't it?
No, fantastic.
We've got a totally earth-shattering performance for you today, a tremendous story for the first film story. But first up, well...
Yes, well, David, I'm going to show you how to grow a tiny garden in glass or plastic.
Lovely. I've always wanted to have one of those, so you can show me how that's done. But first up, really, this is a truly incredible story. When we visited India in March this year, we were really lucky because we arrived in the pink city of Jaipur on the day of the world-famous Elephant Festival. And the whole city turned out. Just amazing. They all headed out to the main sports arena for what has to be the most colourful and earth-shaking festival on Earth. In 1727, the Maharaja Sawai Jai Singh founded the city of Jaipur. And every year, from that year on, they've had a festival, the Elephant Festival of Jaipur. And we're here, we're lucky enough to be here today to see the Elephant Festival in all its wonderful glory. First up, it's the Grand Parade, and what a colourful and spectacular sight it is. I couldn't resist it, I just had to join in. Well, after the procession, the first race of the day, the elephant race. I don't know what the odds are, but it's fairly easy to pick the heavy favourite. And they're racing at Jaipur in the Earthwatch Gold Cup, and the early leader is Barunna's Boy ahead of Gray's Ghost. Third is Peter's Fancy, followed by Harvey's Hope, and bringing up the rear is the youngster from Rajasthan, Robert's Raspberry. And as they pass the post, the winner by half a trunk is Barunna's Boy from Peter's Fancy. Gray's Ghost is third, followed by Harvey's Hope, with Robert's Raspberry last by a tail.
The exercise is going well. How many?
Every event at the festival today is judged, and these are the prizes for the best competitors in each event. They've just finished judging for the best elephant.
The best elephant, you're the first prize.
Sorry. We're about to play elephant polo, and let me just tell you about some of the things you need to play a game of elephant polo. I guess first up, you need an elephant, and there's one right behind me. Actually, you need 8 elephants, 4 per side. Now, of course, you need a driver, and here's a driver. He's called a mahut in India. You need a trusty pith helmet for safety, like so. You need a very, very long stick, polo stick, like this one, which is enormous to reach the ground from way up there. And of course you need a polo ball. Take one polo ball. Let's go and get into the game. Elephant polo is a very slow game. So slow, in fact, that we decided to add some excitement to the proceedings. Up to now, the scores were dead even, no goals each. So I thought I'd show the locals how an Aussie plays elephant polo. It's all very strange from up here. It's so high, and the stick is so long, and the ball appears so small and far away, it's almost impossible to hit. Well, the Festival of Jaipur's drawing to a close, and what an amazing day it's been. People are now getting ready. They're going home, having dinner, and then coming back for the evening festivities, which will be quite stupendous as far as we can tell from the preparations in the city. Elephant polo, it's slow, it's clumsy, but it's incredible fun. What an amazing experience it's been. If you ever get the chance to come here and play for yourself, it's well worth the trip. What a crazy day that was. Unbelievable. Not only that day, but the whole of the next day, the entire town spent the whole day and night throwing red and purple and green and blue dye at each other. They told me the dye would wash out. This was once a white T-shirt. It's now 8 months later, and of course it hasn't washed out, so there you go.
Well, after that earth-shattering event, let's look at what it's like to greet the heavens in World Watch. Underwater is one of the last places you'd expect to find an astronaut training. But this astronaut is gearing up for exactly that, a special sort of scuba dive. is having just the right amount of weights attached so that he'll neither sink to the bottom nor float to the surface. This will give him the floating in space feeling called zero gravity. The United States is hoping to build and live in a space station by 1994. The most important research takes place in a water tank where they're finding out the simplest ways of building the new structure in zero gravity conditions.
This is the best way to simulate the feeling of being in space there is on the ground for a long length or a long duration. You can get zero G with the flying the parabolas in the KC-135, but they only last 20 seconds. So here, if you run a long duration simulation of zero G, this is the best that you can do while you're under the influence of gravity.
Astronauts are used to working and repairing things in space, but nothing like building a space station has ever been attempted. The planned 400-storey building will be made up of enormous tubular cubes. Several shuttle missions will be needed to take the pre-assembled sections into space. When the shell of the station has been completed, living quarters, laboratories and huge solar panels will be added. Researchers are now examining how the work can be done with the least amount of manual labour by the astronauts. They're also looking at which types of joints are best for space construction.
Well, we learn what the right design approaches are. That's where we've been so far. What are the right design approaches for assembly, servicing, and maintenance? It's a new field.
Well, it wouldn't be World Watch without our monthly giant panda story. This one comes from New York, where 2 carat candles mark Ling Ling's 2nd birthday. And what better way to celebrate than by getting stuck into a special treat, a vegetable birthday cake.
Well, this next segment's a real bottler. Here's Maxine with Earth Watching This Week.
Hi there. Well, everyone's heard of ships in a bottle, but what about a garden in a bottle? And we've got one here. Isn't it beautiful? And today we're going to find out just how easy it is to make one of these gardens in a bottle. And here to show us how it's done is Paul Podbury, who comes from the Victorian Schools Nursery. Hi, Paul.
Hi,
Welcome
Maxine.
to the show.
Thanks for inviting me along.
Now, tell me, how do you do it? How do you get a garden in a bottle?
Well, it is quite a simple process, hopefully. We take a 2-litre lemonade bottle or Coke bottle, depending on what variety the kids want to have at home. We put some hot water in that, not too hot, but just warm out of the hot tap, and that will melt the glue that's in the bottom of the container. You can see the glue there.
Yes.
And also it comes out on top here.
Good.
So that provides us with a pot or a base for growing our plants in. The top we have to do a little bit of an operation on. I've marked in here a line, and what we'll do is take a Stanley knife and just cut around that line. You can use a pair of scissors if you want, and sometimes it's just as easy. So we'll try that with the scissors as well, just to show that it is able to be done. And if you cut just below the lump, you'll see that there's a lump, and that'll allow us to fit it inside the container without having to do much pushing.
Good.
So that's the easiest way to do that.
I think it's really neat, doesn't it?
So it's simple. So that's the first step, and we can keep that for later on. Okay. We take some scoria, which is volcanic rock. We put that in the bottom, and that provides drainage. There are drainage holes that you can see.
Yeah.
So we have that so that the water does drain out, but the other material doesn't. We take some charcoal, which the kids can get from the barbecue, and that absorbs any sour taste or any sourness that might develop in that pot because it's covered over and contained and no air is circulating. We need some potting mix, which we'll place the plant into, and then finally we put some sphagnum moss over the top to add a bit of colour and also to retain some of the moisture.
Good.
So the next,
then you put your plants in.
Well, that's it. That's the next step. So if you want to pick some plants, we've got quite a variety here. We've got some peperomias, variegated ivy, trailing aluminium plant, military fern, a Tahitian bridal veil, and dwarf asparagus fern. So
Look, yeah, I think I like the asparagus fern.
Right,
and
that's
that
no
one's
trouble.
pretty, a military fern. That's great. So
Okay.
you can put them in for me?
Right. Well, the easiest step is to put a little bit of soil potting mix into the bottom of our container. Then we have to tap out our plants, so we just loosen those up, tap them on the bench with our fingers over the top. We can take the plant out. We keep some of the soil around the roots, and we place that into our pot, and we do the same with the military fern.
And apart from these plants you've got here, could you put anything else you wanted to?
Any indoor plant would be okay to use. We wouldn't use outdoor plants because they require a different environment in which to grow. So any indoor plant, recognised indoor plant, wouldn't be any problem.
Okay.
We take some more potting mix, fill that up to about, leaving about 1/2 centimetre at the top, so we can put the sphagnum moss in there. So that's established as it is.
Good, and that's the sphagnum moss?
That's the sphagnum moss.
And that keeps the moisture in. In fact, you can see the moisture come out of that.
Quite a lot of moisture already in it.
Yeah. So you just pat some around the top.
Pack that around if you want to put that in while I give the plant a little bit of a water.
Okay, and that's just about done. And how often do you have to water them once you've sealed it over?
Once you've watered the first time, there's enough moisture that will be retained in the moss to provide the moisture for the plant to grow. We'll put a little bit more in.
It'll never dry out?
It should never dry out if we've done it properly. Once we put the top on, which we can... Well, before we do that, we must put a label on it. So if you'd like to write your name on there so that you can take it home and no one will steal it,
okay.
You'll have one forever.
There you go. Good. There's mine.
And we put the top over.
That's really good. Thanks for that. And you can also build them in glass cases like these, and these aren't sealed, so you'd have to water them more frequently.
These have to be watered because more of the moisture comes out the top.
Okay, so they're more elaborate things. But it's so easy to do one yourself in one of these containers that I'm sure anyone could do that by themselves at home. Thanks very much, Paul, for coming in.
Thanks, Maxine.
And David's story on holly elephants was fantastic, but it didn't explain how the elephant got its trunk, which is what I wanted to know, or for that matter, why the leopard has spots and why the camel has a hump. But you can find out the answers to all these questions and lots more in this wonderful book by Rudyard Kipling called Just So Stories. And each story explains how a certain animal came by its physical characteristics. And it's beautifully illustrated by Meg Rutherford. And in The Elephant's Child, for instance, we see how the elephant, which used to have a short, stubby nose, had its nose stretched out by the crocodile into a long trunk. And also how the woolly kangaroo with 4 short legs came to be the bounder that it is today. Of course, it's not exactly scientific, but it's a lot of fun, and it's published by Heinemann for $17.95. Now let's have a look at our letters this week, and they're both about koalas. This one's from Andrew Trophimus, who comes from Sherbrooke in Victoria. And Andrew sent us a photo of himself. Looks like a happy young fellow. And he says he saw a koala in a tree in Sherbrooke Forest, and his family walked for 3 hours and saw only one koala. They're pretty hard to spot, and you need to have sharp eyes and be very patient. And Andrew sent us a drawing of a koala with big brown eyes. That's beautiful. Thanks, Andrew. And we'll be sending you the Just So stories. And we have another letter from Levi Stephen, who comes from Fairview Park in South Australia. And he says, I thought you might like to see this photo, which my mum's cousin took at her house in the Adelaide Hills. Their dog wouldn't stop barking one night, and they went out to see what was happening. They found a koala trying to climb a pole near their house. And there's the photo of the koala and the dog. That's a great action shot. The koala stayed in a tree near their house for a week. Well, wouldn't that be great to have a koala for a neighbour? Thanks very much for your letter, Levi. And keep sending those letters in. And if you've got something at home you want to tell us about, something at school, something in the environment, just write in and let us know. That's all for now.
That's right, Maxine. There's our Earthwatch address too. Send us a photo if you like, but make sure you include a second envelope with your name and address on it so that we can return it later.
And on Earthwatch, we tried to take an approach to our stories that is down to earth. But on this story, David's really up in the air.
Sierra Golf Delta, red leader, we have bearing 109er, altitude 9,000. Homing on target, range 1000 and closing. Ready. Fire.
Well, no, it's not a bomb run. We're actually not in a combat zone at all. Today we're going out to attack clouds. And why would you want to do that, you may well ask? Well, to tell us all about it is Dr. Alex Long, who's been a cloud seeder from way back. Well, Alex, does cloud seeding really work?
Yes, cloud seeding really works. It's been shown to work in clouds in many places in the world, especially here in Australia. Some of the first work was here.
How does cloud seeding work? What's the basis of the whole procedure?
Well, cloud seeding takes advantage of the clouds being naturally inefficient. A cloud does not produce as much rain as it could, and the cloud seeding makes more rain on the ground. And we know that there is a lot of water in these clouds, and our job is to bring it to the ground. And we do this by putting silver iodide in the clouds, and the silver iodide acts as the starter or the beginnings of new raindrops. The silver iodide causes small ice crystals to form. These crystals grow into snowflakes, and the snowflakes fall through the clouds, capturing the water that's in these clouds, and eventually growing big enough to be raindrops, and the raindrops fall to the ground. That's the basis of the cloud seeding.
So you have to find the right kinds of clouds, I guess.
Yes.
And then capitalise on what you know about those clouds to top up the process and make the rain fall.
Yes, not every cloud is suitable for our work. Clouds that are too small are not right. Clouds that are too big are quite efficient, and it is difficult to deal with them. We're looking for a cloud that you would call a middle cloud, something in a middle category, neither too small nor too large.
Well, just looking out the window here, there's a whole bunch of clouds out there, but my untrained eye can't pick one from the other. So what are our chances of success today?
Well, today is not a very good day because the clouds are too small. They're too warm today. So we cannot fly every day because every day is not right for us. Today is not a good day, but that doesn't mean tomorrow won't be. So we have every day to study the weather and to determine whether the clouds are the right kind. And so it's a continuing job. Every day brings us new weather, and every day a new opportunity.
Well, it seems that cloud seeding really works, at least some of the time. The estimates show that it could increase Melbourne's water supply by at least 10%. That's $10 million worth of extra water per year. So you could say that these silver-lined clouds are worth their weight in gold. Because the trouble with cloud seeding is you never know when it's going to take effect. I think maybe my producer had something to do with this. I think it's time for a rather dampened creature feature. I'll go over here and... It's amazing, isn't it, how the little tiny clouds can form up there in the roof of the studio? Yeah. Paul, how would you like to introduce creature feature?
Well, actually, David, I was going to say it is typical Melbourne, isn't it? You don't know when it's going to rain.
That's right.
Well, while you wring out your clothing, here's our creature feature.
Oh, look at
Oh, dear. Our creature today is something that I'd like to be, actually, right now, because I'm cold. It's Melbourne water and it's freezing.
And
our creature is a little ring-tailed possum with wonderful warm fur.
And he obviously doesn't like water because he went rather berserk when when you got rained on?
Ringtail possums live in little round nests of leaves and twigs that they build for themselves, and any sensible ringtail, if there was a shower coming, would go back into that nest.
Yes.
I think so, and this one would love to do that right now, I think.
He really did panic a bit, but he's settling down now.
That's great. I love their eyes. They have...
They're beautiful, aren't they?
Their head
Can
sort
you see
of
their eyes?
is kind of flattened, and their eyes kind of point up at what look like slightly weird angles, and they can get a tremendous view of the world around them, but their eyes are so cute. Aren't they gorgeous? Of course, they're big eyes and they open up wide at night. His eyes are tightly closed down now because of the bright studio lights. Even though we've dulled the lights down, it's still very bright for the possum. Because possums at night, their eyes open up wide and they get lots of light in so they can get round the trees in the dark. They're called ringtails, obviously, because of this beautiful...
Can you see the tail?
...ring tail down here, which is just instantly curled around my finger. And that just automatically happens. It's the way they get a grip on a branch, just like a fifth hand almost. It's got a little pad under the tail with no fur that lets them get a nice strong grip on the branches. So they're very, very agile climbers. And that's obviously how they get their name. Their scientific name is Pseudokairos peregrinus, if you want to be into those sort of words. And Pseudokairos peregrinus means the wandering false foot or wandering false hand. And that really refers to the fact that the front limbs, the little hands, are broken up. The first two fingers point one way, and the other three fingers wrap around the limbs and things the other way. So they've got a kind of a pincer grip on the branches. And you can probably see a pincer grip on your blouse there if we, or even on your finger.
Let's see if we can have a look at
yeah.
one of those little paws which it wants to tuck away.
They're actually very, very friendly and there we are. That's the little claws. You can see how the three toes work separately from the other two.
Can you hold that?
No, look, I won't. He's getting a little bit
There we are,
frightened.
look.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, see how they pincer together to get a really good grip. That's great.
That's beautiful.
They make wonderful pets, or at least they would if you're allowed to keep them as pets. And of course, you can't keep our native mammals as pets these days because it's really not regarded as the best thing for them. But when I was a lot younger than I am today, when I was about 7, in fact, I had a girlfriend called Tina who lived over the road from me, and Tina was 9, and she had a ringtail possum for a pet, and she had it in a great big, like a bird's eye view out the backyard. And so I used to nip across and visit Tina, and we'd take the ringtail possum out and play with it on the backyard, which was terrific. But, well, you know, nice as they are, the way you see them today is either in the wild, if you go out at night with a spotlight and you search around the trees and shine your torch around, and with a bit of luck you'll see a ringtail or some other sort of possum, or else you can go to the zoo.
Are these the same as the possums that you get in the roof in the suburbs?
No, they're not actually. Those ones are almost always brush-tailed possums, which are much bigger, and of course they're incredibly noisy. I mean, they just take over the roof of your house and thump around there at night having a great time, doing what possums love to do. But it can occasionally be one of these, but you'll probably see where these are if you find those little nests out in the garden. If you've got a fairly bushy kind of block of land, you might just be lucky enough to find a ringtail possum nest out the back.
They make lots of nests, don't they?
They do, yeah. They have a very large territory that they live in, and they have maybe 5 or 6 of these little nests spread around the territory. So they have a kind of a holiday home, if you like. They can go from house to house, depending on their mood. They're very sociable. They get around in little gangs of ringtails quite a lot, and they almost talk to each other. They've got a little twittering sound that they make, and you can hear them out in the bush at night. If you go out in the bush and just sit down and quietly listen after dark, especially in the first part of the night, which is when they're most active, you'll hear this little twittering sound that can quite easily be ringtails.
I've got some food there, actually, if you'd like to.
Yeah, I might give it a little munch.
Banana it likes.
Banana? Okay, here's some banana for you, little possum.
Oh, here it comes.
Oh, there we go. Yes. I don't think he's very interested in this. Actually, it's time for us to go and get some dinner pretty soon. For now, it's time to go. So we'll see you next week on Earthwatch.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.